said, so basically the agenda is what does a business analyst actually do in real projects, followed by essential skills needed to transition into business analyst role. So what are the skills, maybe, which will also cover some tools and techniques and some other knowledge areas also which will be required to essentially transition into business analyst role, be it IT or non-IT. With IT, there would be some additional stuff because we need a little bit of technicalities as well. But yeah, for non-IT, maybe those technical understanding may not be required, but just business analysis specific skill set will be needed. Okay. And then we'll have roadmap, then we'll have how ECBA certification is worth it in 2026. It has undergone a change in 2025 and now it is more relevant. And now industries are more eager and ready to give a chance to those business analysts who have this industry recognized certification like a ECBA or entry certificate in business analysis. So we'll see the reasons why this is worth it in 2026. And then we'll cover a roadmap, how somebody can get into business analyst role from non-IT background, especially. Okay, because that is what the primary agenda of this session is. So first of all, covering what a business analyst actually does. Okay, so in simplistic terms, as the name says, business analysis, which means analysis of business, right? So it's basically having that level of skill set, that level of knowledge, that level of maybe understanding of a person that will allow him or her to analyze business, solve their problems by recommending solutions. And those solutions could be IT based or non-IT based, depends on the scenario. So the main purpose why a business analyst is needed is to uncover business needs and then solve those business problems and address the opportunities. Because what are business needs? Business needs are basically can be categorized as a high level into problems which a business may be facing, right? Or there may be some opportunities which may be there in the market, which a business would like to make use of, right? So the role of a BA is to understand maybe from stakeholders through documents or through whatsoever means that they have to understand and uncover those business needs which business want to satisfy or address, and then solve those business problems or address those opportunities in the most appropriate manner. Some opportunities or problems can be solved in a simplistic way just by making a small change to a process, for example, right? Maybe some things are done in a lengthy manner or time-taking manner, and those could be automated or enhanced. They could be made more value-driven, right? It could be simplistic, right? Whereas in some cases, those business problems or opportunities may be very heavy in nature, okay, very large, very comprehensive. That would need maybe a whole system, whole initiative to be taken up to solve that business problem or address an opportunity. Like, we have this upcoming or rather ongoing opportunity related to artificial intelligence, especially Gen AI, wherein all the organizations are trying to figure out how that would fit in their organization. So business analysts of such kind who are basically required to solve these kind of problems or address these opportunities may be required to maybe understand the whole landscape of the organization, understand Gen AI aspects, and then maybe come up with a solution as to how this organization can make use of it. And some business analysts may work at the entire organization or a strategic level, whereas some BAs or business analysts could be at a business unit level or a department level when they are working on a small projects, right? So, but the idea will remain the same. Understand or uncover business needs and solve it. Okay, recommend the solutions and try the best possible medium to implement that solution. Okay, so essentially, another important thing for a BA to know is to translate those business needs into structured requirements. Now, when we say business analysis, we often hear this words going hand in hand, which is requirements. Okay, because those needs, those problems, those opportunities, that may be a wish list, right? That may be high level needs or high level wants, desires, maybe of a company, of an organization or a stakeholder. But those need to be covered into structured requirements. Okay. And that is where this role of a BA is very, very important because a business analyst may bridge the gap between business and technology. Okay. From business analysts will be able to understand their needs, high level, maybe business requirements, but the technology team, they need proper requirements. They need system requirements. They need what solution is to be implemented, what all features that solution should have. If this is an IT based solution, right? That is where the BA need to be a bridge between business and technology. And he or she should be the one who can talk in the language of business and who is able to talk in the language of technology as well, in case that is a IT BA. Whereas in case of a non-IT BA, maybe their task is just to convert those business needs into structured requirements and ensure that the IT vendor to whom that particular maybe a request for proposal or those particular set of requirements are shared, they are sent over to them in a proper requirements manner. Maybe they don't need to bridge a gap as such between business and technology because they don't need to explain it to any technical team in great sense. Okay, so but the idea here in these third and fourth block is basically to make you understand that a BA basically converts those high level or ambiguous or maybe vague needs into structured requirements. And in case of an IT BA, could act as a bridge between business and technology. Okay, and then coming to the important aspect of the solution. Okay, so when those needs are understood, when those solutions are understood, basically what BA has proposed or somebody from architecture team or whosoever sponsors, maybe BA might be the one who propose solutions or there might be other stakeholders who might propose solutions. But business analysts need to make sure that solutions deliver the intended value. Okay, basically they are solving the needs that were anticipated to be solved. Okay. So BA at different junctures, at different points of time, whether they are recommending solutions, whether they are creating requirements, or whether they are communicating those requirements and acting as a bridge between business and technology, a business analyst need to make sure that the solutions which is being created is of intended value, that is providing the value, that is fulfilling the need, what it is being created for, right? We may end up creating a beautiful looking, very innovative, very creative, with a great user interface, a solution which is wonderful looking, and anybody who looks at it maybe can say that, okay, this is a wonderful looking solution. But what if that solution is not fulfilling the intended purpose, right? If that is not delivering the intended value, what it was expected to do, then that is of no use, right? So business analyst at every stage where he or she get involved, whatever stage, they need to make sure that the solution is delivering the intended value. Maybe they can define certain parameters, certain criteria on which they can judge or they can assess that solution whether it is meeting the intended value or not. Okay. Another important aspect, what comes in the role of a BA is that a business analyst need to be a very effective communicator and they need to communicate with a range of stakeholders. And with range of stakeholders, I mean they would be talking to people who are at very high level, maybe at a very senior level of management, maybe business sponsors, senior business leaders, or people who are playing very strong and very heavy product roles. And BA would also be talking to people who are, say, their own team members like developers, technical architects, data engineers, if they are ITBAs. And also, they would end up talking to users who are actually the main people who are using or carrying out a process or using a software system or even a non-software system whatsoever, right? So BA has to communicate with wide range of stakeholders, and that is why he or she has to be a very effective communicator and also having a thinking level that they need to communicate with a particular set of stakeholder in the language in which they are expecting us to talk, right? So, for example, a very senior BA, a very senior business sponsor won't expect a BA to talk in very technical sense or maybe solutioning sense or functional sense. They just need high level information, okay, of a particular program, of a particular initiative. Whereas when we talk to IT folks, we have to talk in a language which they can understand. They won't be able to understand very heavy business jargons. They will be able to understand when we talk about any particular system, okay, that it should do this, it should do this, and maybe a little bit of technicalities if we are technical BAs. So the idea here is that a BA need to have that kind of a mindset that they talk to a particular stakeholder in the language or through the communication medium that they expect us to. Okay, this is very important role and very important part of a BA's life, that they need to talk to various type of stakeholders in their own language. Okay, then a business analyst creates a number of documents. And that is also something you have heard if you know about business analyst role. And some people consider it to be a role which is very heavy on documentation, right? Document creation. Like we hear about a lot of documents which PAs are asked to create, like business requirement documents, business cases, functional specifications, if it's an IT system, or maybe this software requirement specification, use cases. People who have read a bit about BA, they would be able to understand these terms. But just for non-IT or non-BA folks who don't understand these terms, it's basically to make sure that those requirements are created properly. So a BA was always expected to create a lot of documents, which is now made a little less with different methodologies coming into the picture. But still, a BA is expected to create a lot of documents. But that is not a primary function, is what we need to understand. A business analyst role is not just to create documents. He need to make sure that requirements are well understood by all stakeholders who are concerned, and not necessarily he or she is not necessarily just a document creator, but still documentation is a part of what BA is all about, right? So that is another important thing. And then nowadays, with a lot of data at our disposal, it is very important that a business analyst slightly understand, especially IT BAs, they understand data, when they understand how to read data. So that is why I've also covered in the skill set, maybe some aspects in terms of what a PA need to understand from database or maybe data side of things. Because I mean, data analytics, data analysis, that is also nowadays a skill set which is expected from a BA, because a BA would not only understand the requirement, the needs, and solution building from stakeholders, they will also be required to understand a few important aspects from data, right? They can even come out with problem statements using data, right? Maybe they can study a lot of data, create insights, help business make up strategic recommendations, come up with strategic recommendations, maybe decide on their next steps after what business analyst has given them in the form of insights. Okay, so nowadays, even a bit of understanding around data is becoming largely important. Okay, and that even goes for non-IT BAs also, because data is at the disposal of everybody, right? Whether it's an IT organization fulfilling the needs of a business, or even non-IT organizations, and they also need to make a lot of decisions using data, right? So that is why it is becoming increasingly important. Now coming to essential skills which are needed to transition into business analyst role. Now, what are the key skills? See, I mean, again, in terms of the skill set, there is lot of, I would say, lack of mutual agreement between different industries, and say different companies, even within the same industry, in terms of what should be the essential skills that need to be possessed by a BA. What we have listed here are the skills which should go for most of the programs, most of the initiatives in most of the industries. But again, based on the specifics of the industry and the specifics of the role that they are looking for, maybe they need slightly more, if not less. But these are the essentially the kind of must-have skills which at least a BA should possess, right? So first of all, it's basic business analysis fundamentals. So it's basically about fundamentals of business analysis, be it required related to requirements elicitation, which means how you would gather or elicit requirement from stakeholders. So there are n number of techniques which will be there, which a business analyst need to understand to be able to elicit those requirements from different stakeholders. Because we won't be able to create requirements all by ourselves, right? We need people to talk to. We need people to tell us their problems, maybe tell us even requirements at a level where we can envision the system or the solution, right? So we need to talk to people. So for those, we need to understand a few techniques, right? And maybe if we get a chance, practice those techniques in our scenario in which we are in, right? And analysis and documentation. When we have got the requirements, we need to have that kind of a mindset, that kind of skills in ourselves, to have that analytical problem solving mindset, so that we are able to analyze those requirements, right? And come up with a high level recommended solutions, if at all we are expected to do. Otherwise, if that solution is already decided by somebody, we still need to create requirements to be able to build that solution, right? So we need to be very clear in terms of how to write those requirements, right? Analyze and then write those requirements. So first of all, we need to gather the requirements. Then secondly, we need to analyze and we need to document those requirements. Nowadays, as I said, now with different frameworks like Agile and many other, this is the BA's role is slightly less document oriented now, but still we as BAs need to make sure that we have written clear requirements, unambiguous requirements, so that everybody understand it, right? Clear, consistent, unambiguous, complete requirements, right? And then business analysts who are involved at any very initial level may also do process analysis. And process is nothing but how work is carried out, right? So whether there are 10 people who are carrying out 10 different work to be able to complete a process. So that is basically a process, and business analyst might be expected to do process analysis also to see how that process can be improved. For example, for example, just consider that there is a loan default process. I mean, we need to figure out a process whether the loan is defaulted or not, right? So there could be 10 different people who might be a part of it. And we as business analysts are asked to maybe streamline that process, make that process simpler, leaner. Then we could analyze the process, remove those non-value added waste steps, maybe recommend some automations. So that level of work is also sometimes a BA is asked to do process analysis, and sometimes prototyping also. A BA may be asked to create some high level user interface. If that is a heavy term for you, let me just try to simplify it. Maybe how the application should look like. What should be the first home page of an application? Maybe if that is a mobile, what should be the home page or landing page when you open an application like WhatsApp? So somebody would have created some wireframes or mockups or some kind of a user interface of WhatsApp, right? That this is what it should look like. There should be a photo of a person, and next to it there should be a text message, uh, and then all those sort of UI would have been decided. Now that is basically called prototyping, right? Like how that UI will be there and how will we go from one page to the other, where we should click, where it should go. So that level of things a BA may ask to do. And that is why it is recommended that you understand some kind of a prototyping tool like Figma or maybe any other tool which your company asks you to learn. So that is also something a business analyst may be expected to create or build, right? Then stakeholder management. Like I said, a BA might be expected to interact, collaborate with n number of stakeholders at different levels. And that is where this is seems to be a simple thing, stakeholder management, but it is very complex because there can be n number of scenarios which can occur. Maybe you have to talk to two different stakeholders, but they are not on the same page. They are proposing different things. Okay, there is a conflict. Now you as business analyst need to collaborate, negotiate, facilitate, whatsoever you think you can do. Okay, but you have to make sure that everybody comes into an agreement, and that is when you can proceed, right? By telling your team that, okay, go ahead, implement this because all my stakeholders have agreed. But for that to happen, you need to manage your stakeholders, right? The stakeholder should feel that you are empathetic towards them. Stakeholder should be able to trust you, right? Stakeholder expect you to talk to them in their language, preferred language in which they can understand, right? If you talk to them in technical language, whereas they are purely functional, they won't like it, right? You should need to be able to talk to them in domain specific language, so that because these are business guys mostly, right? Who are business stakeholders. But then there are other type of stakeholders, like I said, end users, technical teams, maybe third party teams like regulators, vendors. So a business analyst need to first of all identify, then effectively collaborate, and then manage those stakeholders at all levels. Okay, so that you fulfill ultimately what they are looking for. Then it would be domain knowledge, because domain knowledge, I mean, wherever you will go, whichever project you get into, of course, that will be related to some business, right? So you will have to understand the business, especially the business processes where you get into. For example, for a banking BA, I won't ask a banking BA to learn whole of banking, right? I mean, first of all, you need to understand that core area where you are going to get into, right? So if it's investment banking, then that. If it is banking related to asset management, then that. So of course, you need to first of all understand that which particular domain maybe is of interest to you, and this is the one which you want to target. So accordingly, you can start building your knowledge in that domain before you start applying for jobs, right? So, because you will need to talk to those stakeholders, especially the business stakeholders, in their business language, right? And that you can do only if you understand their business, right? So, many of the things you will get to know once you get into a particular project and you get to see what processes are running. But at least high level understanding of those business processes, if you get a chance, you should do it. Okay. And which basically should cover the key processes, the regulations in that industry. If it is healthcare, then otherwise insurance, banking, retail. So there are a number of domains which would be there, right? So if you have time before you want to look for jobs, then you can start learning a domain, right? You can use area AI tools or maybe enroll to certain trainings. Even Techcanvass provides some domain trainings. So you can enroll to some those domain trainings and start building your knowledge in that domain. Because nowadays many job openings have domain knowledge as a mandatory requirement, even for entry levels. So that is also an essential skill these days. And then Agile Scrum fundamentals. So if you want to get into IT projects, and even I've seen Agile Scrum being executed in non-IT also. So, but the idea is this is a framework. I won't go into detail because this is a huge framework which take, I mean, a lot of time to cover. But as and when you get a chance, if you want to get into business analyst role, especially IT one, just try and understand what Agile Scrum is all about. How to create user stories. User stories are nothing but a form of requirements. How to create user stories, epics, features, what is a backlog, what are the different Agile Scrum ceremonies. Okay, try and understand what Agile Scrum is all about, at least the fundamentals. Okay, then we have communication and negotiation. So, verbal and written communication, active listening, negotiation, empathy, adaptability. So, all these key soft skills, which are very essential for a BA, because now what I helped you to understand is that BA is at the center of the scheme of things, right? A lot of people are talking to the BA, and BA should be the one who is tasked to make sure that everybody understands the same thing. Okay, not different. And that is where communication skills matter a lot, to be able to explain to somebody, right, through verbal or written communication, because BA may need to write a lot of requirements, lot of minutes of meeting after a meeting, lot of model creation. So BA need to have that level of soft skills where they can make everybody understand, right, what they want to explain. And other than that, active listening, negotiation, empathy, adaptability, all these key skills or competencies are what are the important skills for a BA, right? Then we have analytical thinking and problem solving. Analyze data, processes, user behavior, identify patterns, understand root cause of issues. So just that a BA is expected to be a person who has analytical mindset, who basically looks to solve problems. He or she is not just satisfied with a basic understanding of the symptom. They try to get into the root cause of everything. They try to analyze all those information which is available at their disposal to be able to relate things, to be able to solve the right problem rather than just maybe giving a solution for a symptom, right? So a PA need to be an analytical thinker, a problem solver, and this is something obviously can't be built in a day. This will come with experience when you will get into practical scenarios where you will have different things to look into, how you will relate those things, how you will link those things, how will impact to one aspect uh, have a ripple effect on many other different things. So this kind of a thinking will develop, but this is very important that you think from all different angles. That is what you need to maybe create as a mindset. Don't just think only from what is in front of you. Think from various different aspects, various different touch points. Right? That is when you can solve the right problem. Then we have key tools. Uh, there are various modeling tools like Visio, Draw.io, and prototyping tools like Figma, project management tools like Jira, Azure DevOps. This is very important even for non-IT people who want to get into non-IT BA roles, not just IT BA roles, that they understand these tools. They get to know these tools, and there are a lot of videos which are there now on YouTube, and even Techcanvass has it, and there are multiple trainings also provided by Techcanvass, wherein you can understand these tools. You can there will be practical case studies that will be given through which you can understand these tools, because just going through a basic understanding won't help unless you apply, right? And if you are not getting a chance to apply practically in your job scenario, then you can do that practical stuff in the case studies that any training will provide you. But these are some essential tools, right? Now, people who want to get into specifically ITBA roles, two important things for them is technical awareness and data literacy. Now, technical awareness is basically understanding of APIs, okay, application programming interface. It's nothing but, it seems heavy, but it's just basically how two systems talk to each other, right? When we make a order through an e-commerce firm, it's talking to various different stakeholders, when we various different systems when we make an order, whether it's order management system, whether it's an ERP system, whether it's payment gateway which accept our payment. So it's basically how different systems interact with each other. Databases where the data is stored, right? For e-commerce, our data would be stored in some database, right? So that uh, Amazon or any other e-commerce platform is able to recognize us, right? So there is a lot of data about customers, products, orders, which is stored in databases, and same goes for other organizations, right? The front end versus back end, data flow concepts, some product capabilities. If, for example, you want to become SAP BA, Salesforce BA, any other product specific BAs, then that level of capability you need to build, because you will be catering to that particular product. And data literacy, most important for ITBA, but even for non-ITBAs, it is becoming important, because there is a lot of study data which goes on these days. As I said, there is a lot of things you need to analyze in the form of data, and that is what you can only do when you have some knowledge around Excel or SQL, or maybe a little bit of Power BI, so that you can bring some meaning out of that data, right? Otherwise, if there is a lot of data in front of you, you you don't know anything about it, right? I mean, you can't bring anything out of it. You can't extract much. But if you have some knowledge of some technology which are very basic, I mean, if you read some or you go through some videos on SQL, structured query language, or advanced Excel, or even Power BI, you can make a lot of sense out of that data, right? So these are some of the essential skills which we feel are needed to transition into business analyst role. And now coming to an important topic of where does ECBA certification fit into it, right? So ECBA, or Entry Certificate in Business Analysis, is a certification which is provided by IIBA, or International Institute of Business Analysis, which is widely recognized as a body that has standardized the practice of business analysis. It's a Canada-based organization, and if people who have, if there is any person who is here who has done some research on business analysis, they would have come across IIBA, that it's a organization which is providing industry relevant certifications, and that is where now many organizations look for certified BAs, especially IIBA certified BAs. And that is where we wanted to touch upon this point in case you want to get into business analysis. It's not mandatory to be a ECBA certified, but it always helps, because through this, you basically have a certification associated with you, which is globally recognized. Okay, because it will boost the credibility of your profile. It will demonstrate that you have commitment to business analysis profession, and that is why you have gone through all the IIBA required stuff and you have become ECBA certified. So it's basically adding credibility to your profile, and it's perfect for career switchers, because it will also help you give a lot of foundational BA knowledge. Okay, especially people who are transitioning from non-IT backgrounds, there is no technical aspects in ECBA examination, but there are a lot of market standard aspects. You will understand business analysis, how to develop mindset for business analysis, how you can implement business analysis, and how does standard frameworks like business analysis concept models work. So I won't go into detail of it, but just wanted to make you aware that there are a lot of great foundational concepts which are standardized in the market for business analysis, which you will get to learn as you prepare and go for ECBA. And one of the essential material is BABOK, or the Business Analysis Body of Knowledge Guide. And this is the main bread and butter knowledge material for a business analyst. Okay. Though it is recommended that very senior BAs go through it, but even entry level folks can go through it and try to understand it at their own pace, to at least understand that what are the industry standard practices and practical techniques which are used by BAs globally. Okay. And once you prepare for ECBA, you will have to touch upon this guide to some extent and understand the key industry standard practices. Right? And strategic stepping stone. So it's a recommended pathway before pursuing advanced certification. So to become a BA, this is a first path in terms of certification that you will get. Okay, that you will go for ECBA. And then there is another set of certification which experienced BAs go for. So after ECBA, it's CCBA, and then there is CBAP, or Certified Business Analysis Professional, which is the most widely accepted uh, business analysis certification across the industry. But that is something which very senior BAs go for. But the stepping stone is ECBA. If you want to go through a certification path as you keep on gaining experience as a BA, first would be ECBA, because that does not require any experience as a business analyst. And that will build a lot of foundational BA knowledge, because the way IIBA has now restructured ECBA, they have tried to make it more towards job readiness. They have changed the curriculum, they have changed the content to cater to business analysts who want to look for job right away, rather than just bookish concepts. So that is why ECBA certification is worth going for in 2026. But again, it's for you to decide whether you want this global recognition, or otherwise you can go through understanding of various different concepts yourself, and then you can go for applying for jobs and whatsoever you want to pursue. Then, in terms of the clear roadmap to enter business analyst field, this is what we came up with. That in the and as I said in the beginning, we have covered. I mean, we have specified it in a manner that maybe the first three uh, activities, or first three knowledge areas you can basically cover in the first 2 months, then the next three in the third and fourth month, and the next three in fifth and sixth month. But it's not hard and fast. Maybe in 2 months, if you are really keen, you can cover all these roadmap items in the first 2 months only. But this is just to maybe help you understand that maybe initially, if you have other stuff to do, maybe in the first 1 or 2 months, you can focus on business analysis fundamentals, which is about mastering those key business analyst terminology, concepts, and as I said, industry frameworks like IIBA, BABOK, the business analysis standard. So you can learn business analysis fundamentals through any courses by Techcanvass or any organization, or you can try to learn them on their own. Nowadays, we have a lot of tools, especially AI tools at our disposal, through which we can get those business analysis fundamentals. But trainings always help, because the way training organizations have structured the things, they have clearly specified with the help of proper practical examples, case studies, which will substantiate the understanding, right? If one goes through their own pace and their own ways of going through it, maybe they will understand, of course, but yeah, maybe a structured course will definitely help, especially if you don't have much knowledge around business analysis. So you must learn those business analysis fundamentals, all these key terminologies, requirements elicitation, business requirement documents, uh, business cases, functional specification documents, various elicitation techniques, uh, like interviews, like requirements workshops, focus groups, document analysis, what is business analysis strategy all about, what are KPIs. So there are a lot of key terminology which a business analyst, especially a standard BA, is expected to know. So you can spend your time initially in understanding these business analysis fundamentals. Right? Then you can master these requirement techniques, like I said, touching upon these fundamentals. So these are linked to each other. So you can focus a lot on what are the different elicitation methods, right? What are the different ways in which a business analyst can talk to stakeholders and elicit or gather requirements, right? You can try and understand those techniques. Maybe take some case studies out of it, or maybe have your friends or colleagues become your stakeholders, talk to them, take their interviews, have a workshop with them just to practice that, okay, you have the right understanding, you have the right build-up, which is needed by the industry, right? You need to also understand how to create documents, right? So take some samples, take some sample problems, okay, and as a business analyst, create some documents and try and take maybe any of your stakeholders, maybe any friends, colleagues through those documents. See that they understand it or not. Okay, build the understanding of writing requirement documents, right? And stakeholder analysis and management. There are a lot of stuff which is there across the web in terms of how you will identify stakeholders, how you will analyze stakeholders, and how you will ultimately manage stakeholders. Try and understand how those techniques will help you to analyze, manage, and identify stakeholders. Okay, because it all seems easy, but when we get into the real world, there are a lot of people, and any stakeholder, if we missed identifying, if we missed managing, can cause a lot of problem later on, because they can then come up with their own set of needs or requirements, and if you have missed them, it will be a bringing a lot of change to your requirements, to your documents, right? So it is very important to understand how you will identify, analyze, and manage stakeholders. So try and master these different techniques. There are a lot of material which is there, and you can try and go through it. Then enroll in any training. That is my recommendation that I prefer. Recommending people that instead of maybe getting a lot of material from the net and getting overwhelmed, better go through a structured training program. Okay, because they do a lot of research in terms of understanding what are the key concepts which are relevant in the industry, what you need to understand, what are the tools that you need to have a hands-on on, and quite a few projects or case studies or capstone kind of assignments are given, which will on real world case studies basically, which will help you solve some real problems. So even if you don't have any experience in the industry, you can go through these case studies, try and solve them, and it's more or less like a stimulation of a real industry as such. So you can try, it will help you to understand things practically, right? So this is what you can do initially, okay, in the first couple of months or whatsoever time you want to spend it on. Okay, then hands-on tool mastery. Okay, because of course there is always some tools and techniques which are associated with any practice, right? And same goes for business analysis. You can gain practical experience with Jira, Confluence, Excel, SQL, visual modeling tools through real projects. So if you enroll for such trainings, or maybe if you don't enroll and get some real problems from the web, you can try solving these problems, right? You can maybe get some problem statements on SQL, try and understand SQL, then solve those problems using SQL. Okay, then you can use Excel, because Excel, no matter what profile is, Excel remains highly important, whether we get into a non-AI, AI scenario or whatsoever. Even if it's a software developer or a CEO of a company, Excel remains a tool or a product which is extremely important. So try and understand Excel as much as you can. Now, visual modeling tools, as I said, so there are a lot of tools like Figma, Draw.io, because a business analyst may need to create prototypes, like I said, or maybe they need to create many different kind of models like use case diagrams, activity diagrams. So they need to understand a few tools like Draw.io, Microsoft Visio, and whatnot. So try and spend time on doing hands-on on such tools like Jira, Confluence, Excel, SQL, visual modeling tools like Figma and Microsoft Visio, Draw.io. So you will get to know what these tools are all about, and you can utilize them as and when you get into a real practical world and you get into a project. You will have to use at least some tools. If not these tools, then of course other tools may not be too different from these, right? If you understand the basic concepts, you'll be able to apply those concepts in other such tools as well if your organization is using some other tools. Then, as I said, agile specific BA skills. So nowadays, many projects are being run on Agile, especially Agile Scrum, right? This is a framework to build a solution. So to run a project, basically, to build a IT solution or a non-IT solution. So how you will work as if you are given a chance to be an Agile BA, how you will work in such an environment. So learn some concepts of Agile, Agile Scrum. What are user stories? What is acceptance criteria? What is backlog? And what are some of the sprint planning techniques, so that if at all you get a chance to get into a agile project, you understand these concepts. Okay. And many PAs I see are being interviewed, especially in IT scenarios, for their agile understanding. If they already have some understanding, they are asked to write some user stories, right? They are asked to write acceptance criteria. They are asked what is a backlog, how do they manage product backlog and whatnot. So try and build those skills as well in your next 2 months after your first and second months, wherein you focus on fundamentals. Then, as I said in one of the previous slides, that try and build domain knowledge. Okay, whichever is the area of interest as far as your personal choice is concerned, which domain or industry you are interested in, try to build domain knowledge and then target that particular those set of companies of the related to that domain when you apply for jobs, right? And therein you can mention that you have some good knowledge around it, right? Whether finance is of interest to you, or healthcare, or retail, or insurance, or whatsoever, just try and understand high level processes of that industry. You can do a lot of research. There is a lot of material across different industries. Now we have AI tools also, and there are domain trainings, like I said, from Techcanvass and other organizations, wherein you can try and get a lot of relevant knowledge on a particular domain of your interest, so that when you get into a job, you are able to talk to stakeholders in their language, right? When you have domain knowledge, right? So try and get domain knowledge in one or two domains of your choice, right? Which you want to target when you want to look for jobs, right? And then lastly, we have in the next 2 months after third and fourth month, you can then try going for PA certifications, like right, like an ECBA. If you now want to start applying for jobs, and the jobs which you want to apply for require certified BAs, and also if not also, then you will always be given a preference, right? If that is not a mandatory requirement, still a certified BA would be preferred over a non-certified one, right? So try and see if you want to go for, it's not mandatory, but yeah, if it interests you and you want to be a market standard BA with a credibility attached to your resume, then go for entry level BA certifications like ECPA, and thereafter polish your resume and apply strategically. Okay, try and use a lot of term which you have understood, of course, in your profile, so that you are able to answer if you are asked any questions related to those concepts, those terms, right? So mention the core competencies, the skill set, the concepts, the tools, the techniques which you have understood, which you have gained some hands-on using projects from any training or your own self or from your companies. So try and write about those specific concepts, skills, certifications, your projects, your domain knowledge in your resume. Okay. And then apply strategically. If at all you want some experience, then you can go for some contract positions, right? You can also do some internships these days because companies provide it, or some entry level BA roles. So, first of all, you can use maybe your first job to gain some more practical real world knowledge and experience, right? Because nowadays, the sorry state of the industry is that I mean, even for basic level positions, people need experience. Okay, companies look for experience. So maybe try and gain that experience, maybe through contract positions or internships also, or maybe some entry level BA roles. So gain initial experience before you actually apply in the company of your choice or dream, right? Gain some experience. Then build community and keep learning. Now there are a lot of communities, right, on LinkedIn or other platforms, and even there are a lot of events, which are a lot of meetups, events which are happening, and people who know about IIBA communities, especially in I mean, IIBA is global, so there are a lot of IIBA communities globally also across different countries, and in India also in multiple cities. So you can try and find it out on LinkedIn and join those communities. See what those people are talking about. How is latest technologies and trends changing business analysis practice? So when you join these communities, you can even be able to find a mentor who is ready to guide you, and maybe give you a lot of mentorship in terms of how you should polish your skills, right? And how you should advance your career. And then later on, you can keep learning through other certifications, right? You can pursue. So if, for example, people who want to go for business analyst, data specific business analyst role, they can do some data certifications also, right? They can do some courses on data analytics. They can do some courses on Power BI, SQL, right? So there are a lot of such profiles which are kind of amalgamating the business analysis as well as data analysis. And people who are looking for, say, product-based roles, like they want to be SAP BAs or Salesforce BAs or any other product BAs, so they can do some certifications and knowledge building around those technology areas, right? So you can build your community, you can take guidance from, you can ask your questions from those very senior BAs, very experienced people. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a mentor also. And then you can keep learning through by diversifying also, right? Because many roles now require people who wear multiple hats, right? People who are BAs as well as they are able to do something or the other, especially data specific roles. That is why we focus on data also, right? That because business analysis closely links with data analysis. So you can um, keep learning on those other areas of your interest, especially if those interest areas interest you, right? So after you go, just go through this presentation, this recording, if you have not understood anything, uh, and you can go through this roadmap again. You can start your journey if at all this seemed convincing to you, and then hopefully you'll embrace the business analyst role in 2026. Hopefully you get a role of your choice, your interest, your domain, everything what interests you, and you embrace this business analyst role. You become a great BA. People look up to you in terms of solving their problem, and you do great. So this is what we basically wanted to cover in this session.